Bethesda is talentless, and first of all, it's completely hopeless. They're not hiring people with talent or skill to improve or fix their games. They're hiring activists, and first off, they're hiring hardcore, openly activist people, so nothing's ever gonna get fixed. But Bethesda, because of some miracle, had a community of modders who loved their games and were willing to fix it for them, and for free. Bethesda was in a miracle position where they had to do nothing. Nothing! They didn't have to do anything, and their games would be fixed for the majority of the player base, and goodwill would be spread. But what did Bethesda do? Did they just not update their games and let people with actual talent fix them for them? No! No! Bethesda, at this point, it has to be on purpose. At this point, it has to be on purpose that Bethesda literally just ruins the modding scene on purpose. Because this is what happens. Someone painstakingly makes a mod for free for the community because they like and enjoy the game. And then literally a week after, Bethesda decides, you know what, we're gonna change a lot of things in the code for no reason, no bug fixes, no nothing, and there you have it, all the mods are broken again. And they're doing this constantly. Someone fixes their game, Bethesda just ruins it. And it's gotten so bad that even people like Juicehead can no longer ignore how bad it has become. It is truly a special situation.
So you probably just heard about this. Digital Foundry recently published the fairly scathing report that, yep, Oblivion Remastered is still broken a year after release. This detailing some of the ongoing problems with Oblivion Remastered, but also the complete lack of communication. It seems like Oblivion Remastered is no longer getting updates, but that's mostly because an update was mentioned in an article, but then just nothing else ever came of it. This has been making the rounds, and while yeah, the Oblivion stuff is definitely bad, and
you know what's the funniest part about Bethesda mentioning, oh, there's gonna be an Oblivion update and this and that? It's the fact that there's a bunch of people who are literally just gobbling it up. They're literally looking for that slaw pipe, they're pulling it out and just pushing it down their throats. Unironically, there are people who do this en masse.
even worse when you consider what's coming next, but these issues go even broader, as right now you can find frustrated communities with Starfield, Fallout 76, and Fallout 4, because Bethesda has a fairly widespread.
Honestly, I haven't done an update on Fallout 76, but you probably have heard about the situation, and no, it's not an overstatement. It is the reality of 76 at this point. Bethesda is relatively actively actually updating the game, pretty much like weekly updates, and every time they do an update, they break something. In 76, there are more bugs at this point than, well, I would like to say ever, but it's not as buggy as it was on release. But we are getting to the point where 76 is gonna be so broken soon that it's gonna rival how bad it was at the beginning of its launch. And that is not a position you want to be in.
Update problem with their games, and even some of their responses around this aren't all that reassuring. Digital Foundry started talking about Oblivion Remastered again thanks to a fan question of all things. The 1-year anniversary of the game Shadow Drop just passed, and while this truly was one of the coolest moments in gaming, I think many of us will always remember that Shadow Drop, and this also being the first proper Bethesda remaster. But at the same
It wasn't a shadow drop, it was a really, really good campaign. Bethesda obviously sprinkle bits and pieces of, hints here and there so all of the channels can make videos about it. It was a campaign. It was not Shadow Drop, and it was a really good one. I'm surprised Bethesda pulled it off.
time, I think this also hid many of the true issues with Oblivion Remastered that were here since the release of the game. The hype got us this time, because what you find is, while this Unreal Engine 5 project looks absolutely stunning, quite quickly in gameplay you notice it does have a prevalent stutter problem. So even in just medium-length gaming sessions, you're going to be getting a ton of stutters, and probably a few crashes as well. All of this even after the 2 major updates that have dropped.
A few crashes, eh?
For the game last year. And even on consoles, there is a separate problem where your performance just degrades over time. This was a problem on.
This is underselling it so drastically, if I'm being honest, because the reality is Oblivion Remastered at this point is abandoned because There is no way to play this without mods. When the game came out, because it's the best Bethesda game in literally 2 decades, probably, people loved it. People played it. But at some point, the stuttering issues, the nonstop crashes, because crashes are very common. Some people literally experience like a crash every 10 minutes playing this. The moment the high of the game wears off, it's like you're gonna abandon it because you're not gonna deal with a crash every 20 minutes. No one will. It's abysmal. And Bethesda's never gonna fix this. They want to forget Oblivion Remastered ever dropped because Todd is probably mortified that people are enjoying it because the old Bethesda was better than the new Bethesda, and everyone now knows it because of the Oblivion Remaster. It's just a superior game in every aspect to anything Bethesda has released in the past 10 years.
Release, and Digital Foundry just retested it to confirm, yeah, it's still like that. Play Oblivion Remastered for too long, and you'll just get less FPS on consoles. The last update for this game was in July of 2025, and while Bethesda may have confirmed a patch 1.3 to the Economic Times, they mention it in this article, but otherwise I can't find an official source anywhere, nothing has actually come to the game, and there's really been no news around this since July of 2025. So it seems safe to say that this game might just stay this way, with degrading performance over time as well as stutters just being a feature of the remaster. And what makes all of this so unfortunate is game problems followed by poor communication and even lackluster updates just feels like it's becoming a staple of Bethesda game studios at this point. Starfield recently got its big update. It finally came to PS5, and of course space travel is now a proper feature with free lanes. The content of this update itself is really solid. I was very impressed with what they showed off, but sadly this is debuted with a huge crashing issue on PlayStation 5 and even to a lesser degree on Xbox. Sometimes this is just a flat crashing of the game, so you're just exited from the game, but it seems like the most common problem going on right now is the game would freeze. Sometimes while doing something specific, other times while just playing even relatively early on, and this would result in you having to restart the game to unfreeze it. In real-world gameplay,
Every time I see the freeze, I'm thinking the video froze. That's really annoying.
the game is crashing every couple of hours, and of course this often comes with some degree of progress lost, which is incredibly frustrating.
Now, to be fair, since no one's playing Starfield, I think we can just ignore this because who asked, honestly?
Starfield on PlayStation 5 was a great seller, but has been met with not good
What do you mean great seller? And what an absolute obvious lie. It doesn't run properly. It still doesn't run properly. People who bought it on PlayStation 5 are complaining that it doesn't run. It's buggy, it doesn't run properly, it's bad. Also, it's sold super poorly. We have an official little report about that. And furthermore, it was so bad that PlayStation gave a refund. Man, they humiliated the Xbox hard there.
reviews because of this crashing problem. You find many of the reviews describing an otherwise positive experience except for crashes. But okay, it's been 5 weeks
Not true.
since the PS5 launch, and Bethesda has dropped 2 updates. One of these was a very quick hotfix right after release that was just for the PS5 Pro Enhanced mode, but this past week we also got a proper update for all platforms, and while yes, this patch very likely did impact things somewhat, the vast majority of reports you could find online were that Starfield still crashes all the time on PlayStation 5. And mind you, this
Who would have expected?
patch took 5 weeks to drop from the Free Lanes update, so people are waiting quite a while to get rid of these crashes, and they're still here. And one important note here is that some people do seem to just be totally unaffected by the crashing issue on PlayStation. You find posts of people saying, "I've never crashed and I'm having a great time." But from game reviewers to even regular fans, lots of people are still crashing and crashing regularly. And you can find this reflected in the overall reviews for Starfield on PS5. This is definitely a wide-scale problem. And this is where you kind of get into the next phase of this issue with now what? Bethesda is also coming up short in their follow-up support for a lot of these games. The
What
Starfield
is this gameplay?
patch from this week stated that another all-platform update was planned for June, so likely in another month or so we'll get another update in mid-June. So okay, cool, but will that address all of the crashing issues? Because then you're looking at 2.5 months potentially after release, and one, a lot of people might not be around anymore, and two, that's a fairly long time to just have a new game release be crashing. Because this exact same pattern has been repeated by Bethesda a few times now, and it's often ending disappointingly. As much as Bethesda has problems with bugs in their games, particularly around releases, games, communication and the timing of these patches is also a huge problem. Oblivion Remastered launched and had a ton of similar performance issues. Of course, some of these were around difficulty settings and damage, but here stuttering was really the biggest problem on release. Bethesda's first major statement around a patch for Oblivion didn't come until a month after the game dropped in June. Like, Oblivion literally skipped all of May. The game came out in April and they just didn't really talk about any of the problems in May. Of course, we got a few quotes here or there, but nothing official and proper. And as Oblivion's patches finally started dropping in June and July, the vast majority of players were already gone at this point. It's a single-player RPG, so
Yeah, it's literally dead. And this is what Todd Howard, I think, wanted. Again, it's just this is just another part of Todd's humiliation ritual that never ends, it seems like. He tries to tell you, because this is, by the way, an official statement that Todd Howard and, his team, I think Emil Pagliarino also was a part of it, did. And he said, oh, you don't actually like the old games. Morrowind wasn't as good as you think. It's just the fact that you were a kid when you played it and it felt really good then, but in the modern day it would be really bad. Oblivion Remastered completely made him eat his own words on this regard, and, well, if I was Todd and my life would be so much unstoppable pain, it seems like, I would also just kind of choose to let Oblivion die.
Naturally, 5 to 6 weeks after release is a very long time in that world, especially when you consider this is a remaster that many people have already played to some degree. We never actually got confirmation that Oblivion was done getting updates, but at this point, as we approach a year since any major news, it seems like a safe assumption. The only hope being a Switch 2 release would bring us further fixes, but even if the game is fixed up to completion with a Switch 2 release, that's not really the point, is it? Game-fixing updates aren't just supposed to happen when there are new opportunities to make money around the game. It's also supposed to be for all of the people who already spent money on the game and are having issues. But to me, Bethesda's most egregious updates yet have come for the Fallout franchise. Many of you likely remember how Bethesda sorta broke Fallout 4 with its next-gen update in 2024.
What do you mean, sorta? It literally broke the game like 100% fully.
But the situation is actually worse than many of you remember. The next-gen update wasn't announced until 2 weeks before it dropped, so there was just a ton of confusion and even fear-mongering in the community. Fallout 4 hadn't been updated in years, so whenever this was coming, or whether or not an update was even coming in the first place, would lead to a ton of mods breaking, and there was just a ton of confusion around what was going on. This was all around the release of Fallout Season 1, and it just wasn't a great time for communication from Bethesda. Except when it came to the next-gen update, it didn't even ship in working condition. It of course led to the stutter issue that would stick around in Fallout 4 for over a year to follow, but it also didn't include texture files for some of the newly added weapons from that update. Thankfully, 2 weeks later, Bethesda did fix that, although several other problems were left untouched.
2 weeks later, and by the way, with fixed, not really. Again, Juicehead is currently lying. He has been lying for the last, I don't know, 5 minutes of the 7 minutes that we have watched. When he says fix, nothing has actually been fixed. Fallout 4, the next generation update, still is breaking the game. It is still very much unplayable for like 90% of people without mod intervention.
Including a giant problem where if you edit an NPC's face-gen data, the game would begin stuttering, introducing a massive issue into nearly a decade-old game that Bethesda proceeded to just move on from. We didn't get official acknowledgement of these newly introduced Fallout 4 issues until over a year later, as we were finally getting around to this anniversary patch, of course, with Fallout Season 2. Again, it's not like this was just a free patch for Fallout 4 to fix an existing and fairly large-scale issue. No, this was a content release around a new season of a TV show. So while yes, it did finally fix this stuttering issue that was plaguing the game,
a TV show that failed,
particularly impacting console players, how this was done a year and a half later was also pretty funny. They just Control-Z'd it. A year and a half later with the anniversary update, they simply undid the changes they made from the next-gen update to remove the stutters. So yeah, you had to wait a year and a half for some Control-Z action. Obviously, that's a gross oversimplification, but effectively that's what was done. But while that worked, while the stuttering issue was gone, this Fallout 4 update also added in a plethora of problems on its own, including the mod menu breaking, DLC no longer
Yeah, well, if you're wondering how bad the situation is, everything's still broken, especially 76. I mean, if you go into the 76 problems, we're gonna be here all day. What does Toddy boy have to say about this? Probably lies, I'm assuming.
Looking in. Todd Howard is really our only insight into Bethesda at this point. He is the only one doing consistent interviews around the company, and when speaking about some of these issues, I found these responses to be lacking.
It's like increasing the storage space, something that we kind of put off. There's some internal plumbing we need to do, but it's more so there's a lot of user pain there. So there might be a certain audience that says, I want my storage space increased. This is particularly on Xbox, because when we change it, there's nothing we can do about it. It just trashes all of your storage space. And so there's a lot of user pain there. And so you have your very informed users that are kind of at the top of the pyramid that we're thinking about, but there's a larger one where their game's just going to break and they have no understanding why, even if we're providing it. So we're still working to smooth that out.
Here, Todd Howard is 100% correct. Not that I'm really in any position to tell him he's correct about his game, but either way, yeah, the mod storage space expansion, when it goes live, is going to wipe your load order. So if you haven't already, make sure you back this up, otherwise you're going to lose this. But I also think he's just missing the point. Fallout 4's anniversary update could have been an epic celebration of the community, adding in way more modability, but the way Bethesda approached this feature is very telling to me. It was never mentioned in any of the trailers for the anniversary update, and of course, 6 months later, it's still not here. We're wondering where it even is. The mod space expansion is the biggest community requested feature for Fallout 4 and has been for years. You go online, you can find a ton of people talking about this. It would have been very smart to have this ready for the anniversary update, but that clearly wasn't a priority. Even in the best case scenario, they wanted this out in late November or December, after the first update. And the fact that it was only properly revealed after the initial update broke a bunch of stuff did feel a bit rough. Todd Howard also spoke more directly about some of the broken Fallout 4 updates in this interview.
And so just to let people know, like, it's a priority for us. Whenever we see that happening, we're always trying to do better. And I think we're in an okay place, but again, a lot of room to grow in terms of when we update our games, that nobody is sort of seeing that. And there's also the world of like script extenders that kind of piggyback on the executable. That's a tricky one too. We try to give them an early look to sort of prepare for it, but even that's tricky for those groups that do it. But just let people know, we're thinking about that, right? We're thinking about script extenders when we're doing things and what is the timing. And, we do our absolute best there.
And yeah, it's a fine response, but I think it really just lacks gravity. Lately, my view on Bethesda has been impacted the most by how they're handling some of these updates for their games, so this response doesn't feel like they're really internalizing how big of an issue this is. And while yes, I am just speaking from my perspective here, I do think this is reflective of how much of the community does feel. And when you also consider the lack of communication around the future updates that will hopefully resolve some of these issues or finally add those things in, but they're not talking about them even still, yeah, it just feels like this isn't a priority. Todd Howard also spoke about Oblivion Remastered recently on the Kinda Funny Games cast.
I am very still, this is only for like...
Oh look, it's the people who said mixtape is amazing.
The stuff we've made here that I've made.
Sure.
I'm sort of anti-remake. I respect the other ones out there, but I think part of the age of a game is part of it's part of what it is, like its personality and what it represented when it came out.
God, I fucking hate every single Todd Howard interview because it's just a non-stop deluge of non-answers. In any case, that was Juicehead, 10 out of 10. You know the situation is real bad with Bethesda. Have a nice day. Bye.